My guest needs no introduction, but he is one of the most genuine people I ever met at the University of Hartford, and I'm really not saying that. He has a great mind, he has a great heart, and he's a great human being. And he has also joined us, and we're lucky enough to see him create content as well. He is the host of Fresh Faces New Ideas, David Bach. Welcome to Productive Conversations podcast, my friend. How are we doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Matt. So yes, like Matt said, I am I do a YouTube channel called Fresh Faces New Ideas. That's where you can find me on YouTube. On Twitter, you can find me at Faces Ideas. Still growing. You can also, if you and I can tell this story later how I got started in this. If you listen to the Center Life Radio podcast on Fridays is when I record them, and then usually puts them up on the weekend. So that's on either their website or Apple Podcast Center Live Radio. I've been doing that for 3 years now, almost part.
All right.
That's when I started.
He's doing beautiful, man. Beautiful. All right. That's really exciting. So yes, why don't we just hop into that right away? You have the merchandise and you've already explained where we can find this show. As for me, becoming a recent fan after we rekindled and checked out the great things you have to say about today's news and today's politics. But that's what my initial impression, and I really enjoy it. It's David Bach is like a step up from cable news, whether you're a Chris Cuomo or a Don Lemon or a Chris Hayes or a Rachel Maddow, Tucker Carlson, all those men and women talking about the news and talk about the world of politics. And I personally think David Bach takes it a step further, and I like his non-corporate opinion expressing the news. But yes, David Bach tells us how it is. But David Bach, tell us, the audience, what is Fresh Faces New Ideas as a whole?
So the whole point of it was to reach out to the group of people that aren't generally represented. Prior to this election, the largest group of Americans was non-voters. So the goal of Fresh Faces New Ideas is to break down what is currently going on in the news in a way that the average person can follow in a simple way. And I try, obviously everyone has biases. I have my biases. I have my preferred candidates. I have all of that. I try to break it down as evenly as possible. If you go and you've looked at the channel, I make most recently. So we're shooting this the 16th. On the 15th, I did 2 videos. I usually do about a video or 2 a day. Fridays, I do live streams. The goal is ultimately to be a live streamer permanently once I get a big enough, following. So the 2 videos I did recently were Ron Johnson's comments, just general comments on the January 6th insurrection, and then all the stuff facing Chris Cuomo. So I have my bias, but I try to make it, even to both sides about what I'm covering. So the goal is to reach as many people as possible with this simple a message breaking down. If you go to my channel, you can see I've covered HR 1, HR 5, HR 846. So for those who don't know the numbers based on that, HR 1 is the For the People Act that's covers voting rights. HR 5 is the George Floyd and Policing Act that covers criminal justice and the reform in policing. And HR 8 and HR 1446 is the gun control, and it's the Charleston loophole bill. So what I do is when I look to cover a bill, I go, what is the bill? And these things have a lot of text and stuff. So I try to find like all the bullet points, and then I say, okay, well, what's the arguments against the bill? And then usually that's I'll go to Twitter and I'll find what are the Republicans saying about it, or what are the Democrats saying about it, and then I'll try to find what is the counter to each argument. Is it a good argument? Is it a bad argument? And then usually I'll try to put in my own thoughts to it, because I like to think of myself as a relatively rational person. And so if I see a bill and I say, okay, this is what it does, I think that makes sense, or I don't think that makes sense. I know there's parts of stuff that I'll miss, and people feel free to comment on it. I've gotten to a couple arguments with people, one guy on Twitter, a couple guys on YouTube have not liked my opinions, but it is what it is. You're not going to please everybody.
Always important to defend it as well. I think it's important to have this conversation, especially with people who we disagree with, because someone's going to be learning something at the end of the day, as long as you have patience for it and rational, don't you think?
Yeah, that's also the other thing. So I'm a lot of my arguments are very fact driven. I look at a lot of polling and I look at a lot of data to figure out where, my arguments were. So a lot of how I got into politics was in two ways. So when 9/11 happened, I was like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So I used to listen to the news a lot, but I was very Republican. I listened to like Sean Hannity and Mark Levin a lot. I actually, for my 11th or 12th birthday, my dad took me to the Palisades Mall to get their books signed. So I have those. And then I kind of like dropped out of it in middle school and stuff. And then in 2016, Donald Trump started running. And I went, this guy can't be real. Like, this can't actually be happening. The things that he's saying are just so absurd. And then as the campaign went on, I was like, well, this seems like something to listen to. I just started following more sources, and the more stuff I listened to, the more I enjoyed like following it and knowing what's going on.
And it seems that is a common trend with people recently, that the Trump administration, Donald Trump himself, really started to have people gain interest in politics and trying to understand, what exactly he did in his administration. It's funny you say that. Like, I've always was aware of politics. Like, the first time I really got into it was in high school, specifically. Like, I was very made aware of the Obama-McCain election 08, but the first presidential election 2012, just shy of voting, was the first time like I paid attention to debates. I actually looked at the candidates, understanding how it worked well, because I was taking civics and understanding how the government actually works and where it comes together. That's really when I started to have the smallest interest. Obviously, as it grew, also was fascinated by the Trump administration, and I was an interested ed during that time as well, that fall. And, ever since, me, and especially who I used to do a podcast with, that come time to time, Ryan Page, does a tweet cap. I get very similar vibes from you, very political minded. And after the Trump administration, he turned into a real political junkie as well. So it's funny how that comes together from Mr. Trump, huh?
Well, I think it's a good thing. It's so it's actually twofold. So here's my opinion on that. I think it's good that more people are civically engaged, because as we saw just from last year, the way that our government has functioned for the last like 20 plus years has been just a disaster. Like, got hit by almost every single possible thing that could happen poorly to a country, and we failed them on almost every single level. And so I think that having more people aware and engaged will allow us to hold our lawmakers to account for the things that are broken and try to fix them. The other side of that is we ended up with this like fake news bubble where we have some portion of the country that's living in an alternate reality, and that ultimately encompassed itself in the January 6th insurrection. So you have to weigh the good and the bad, and that's part of what I hope for my channel is I try to give it in the simplest, like most basic terms of what's currently happening. And this is part of the problem with the general news as itself. And this was actually one of my friends was asking me to talk to her students about this, was media literacy. You have to be aware of where the biases is for each of your sources. So like if we look at the three major news networks are NBC, CNN, and Fox News. I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but here's what I say. Fox News is far right.
Yep.
Of the three, I think CNN is the most fair. They were very early. They had a lot of the Trump people on. They did stop them because they would just lie and not make any statements. I do think they need more progressives on. Too often when they would have people debating, it was Anna Navarro who was debating the Democratic side. She's not a Democrat. So I think, having more people like Anna Kasparian or Young Turks or Ryan Grimm is generally very good. Having those people on for CNN would help them more, but they're generally the most balanced. And MSNBC, although it's given a left-wing label, it's not actually left-wing. What there generally are is an establishment bias. So they were very anti-Trump. Like they were the most anti-Trump station because they had a lot of like old school Republicans on it, like Nicole Wallace and Katie Tur, like old school Republicans in it. But they also were very hostile to the progressive movement as well, as you saw, with Chris Matthews right before he resigned because of all his some of the things that he and Chuck Todd were saying about progressives.
Right.
So MSNBC is not left their establishment. So they love people like Claire McCaskill, like Joe Manchin, these centered people. Like, and part of the problem with MSNBC is they got sucked into the Lincoln Project stuff.
Right.
And they were all just like, look, the Lincoln Project, the best thing that comes from it is it shows progressives how to fight. Like, those are the ads you need to run, but they accomplished nothing else. All they did was, basically steal money from people.
So, and what exactly, we know the purpose from it, but what exactly is the Lincoln Project to somebody who doesn't know any idea what it is?
Okay, so the Lincoln Project, what it started out as and what it became are separate things. So what it started out as was a whole bunch of Republicans who they didn't like Donald Trump. So they tried to encompass this never Trump Republican base in order to push them to being anti-Trump, whether it was, if there was a primary against Donald Trump, it went absolutely nowhere. Or to just, counteract the either the Republicans who supported him or him himself. What ultimately ended up happening was they failed in both of those goals. And I don't know if the second part was entirely their fault with what happened for the races, where the Democrats massively underperformed in the Senate and in the House in 2020. But for them getting this mythical anti-Trump vote, it just never showed up for Biden. Part of the problem also with the Lincoln Project is who's in it. One of the main guys was an MSNBC host or guest who went to go help Howard Schultz, who was the
CEO of Starbucks.
Yeah, he was going to make a spoil run because a lot of what was happening was they were afraid Bernie was going to win, and they were more comfortable with Trump's second term than they were with Bernie winning. So he went to do that. And then later documents came out that, the Lincoln Project was super corrupt with how they did their finances, paying themselves. And one of their members was either had some type of sexual impropriety. I don't remember if it was sexual harassment or if it was with children. I don't remember exactly which one it was because
Definitely not a good thing, it sounds.
So that was my issue with that.
Yes, I see. So was it almost like a big hedge fund, like a big media broadcasting hedge fund in a way, and trying to influence more corporates to get to go for these candidates?
Honestly, what it was is, so I'm sure if you look up Lincoln Project, you're gonna see a whole bunch of their ads. They ran some really hard hitting, gut punching ads. The problem was they weren't swaying people.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's one of the things when you just bash people so much you don't even give an option or why or a reason why.
Well, no, I think they weren't just like baseless attack ads. I thought they were relatively good. They did point things out, but there's a lot of polling that if you just go completely negative, it doesn't show that you get the people that you want. That's one of the things. So when I listen to a wide variety of sources, one of them is Pod Save America, who I know they have a bias because they're all former Obama staffers, and they've said that they've done that. I actually found them on the Ringer when they were keeping it 1600. So they did that, and they have a lot of polls where they do like change research polls about these type of ads, and one of the things that they found is, if you just go super negative all the time, which it makes for really good sound bites, and it seems like it would be the type of thing people are actually turned off.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things the Lincoln Project had a problem with. They just had a whole bunch of problems, and a lot of it was the Trump era had a lot of like weird feel good stuff where you would like create a moment of anti-Trumpness and it would make this little happiness bubble and people would love it. And then they would like throw money at it if you offered it. Otherwise it would like fade away. This is like I think it was like 2017, 2018-ish when Oprah gave some type of speech and there was like a month-long thing about, is Oprah running for president? You remember that?
Yes, I do remember that briefly.
It's that
early in 2016. I see.
Yeah, it's like that type of feeling. So that's what they tapped into to get this type of money.
One of the things you were mentioning about was having a sway and being able to persuade people on the way, whether you or a group thinks, when it comes to media groups, you can even talk about this. You could somewhat compare it to sportscasters knowing who their favorite teams are. Do you feel it's better for a news organization to make it abundantly clear if they have some type of political stance, specifically in the cable news division?
I think it varies. So I think this is one of the things that Fox does. Fox has a delineation. Their morning shows, they have actual people who they consider reporters, and then the Tucker Carlsons, the Sean Hannitys, the Laura Ingrams, they're considered personalities, and they do this for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is they say a lot of really terrible things that's going to get them sued if they're reporters. That's why they delineate for them. So I think if you're going to create a delineation like that, you should delineate what you're doing. But the problem is a lot of the news should just be, here's what the facts are, and that's what it is. It shouldn't be like a perfect example of why there's some bias is climate change. So 98% of scientists say the climate change is real. Yeah. But the way it's presented as a 50-50 argument that maybe it's not real or not, when it's really not. So the way that the news media has to do it is, the Republican Party is the only party in the world that doesn't believe in climate change.
Yeah.
And that's something that needs to be presented when they bring these points up, or they need to be realistic with their polling and showing things. So
yeah, a lot of
those. It's good to have a delineation, but I think it's also part of on the person who's following that news network, or however you're getting your news, like whether it's TV, or if you're getting it on the internet, or if you're getting it from like the newspaper, to understand where the biases are. And generally the best way to do that is to follow the money.
Right. And that's obviously been a trend, especially as more media conglomerates are created, especially the rise of social media, that you are able to get various sources and various ways of people to report the news. And we've clearly seen and already mentioned before that has led to, even though that has led to various opportunities, it's also led to a lot of fake news. And talking about fake news, do you feel the main contributor to fake news is social media? As many people say it has been, because of the opportunities it gives people to just be a reporter or a blogger.
Yeah, so it does have that impact. A lot of social media is designed to, just whatever bubbles to the top, and then it can segment it itself. So yeah, social media itself has as a fake news issue, but that just comes from the sites not following their own terms of service, especially for like Twitter and stuff. They weren't, or even Facebook. Facebook has made it clear that you can line your political ads and they're not going to fact check you. So part of the problem with that is, if you're going to, the best way to deal with that is to treat them like news organizations. If you're going if you're going to act like you're going to disseminate news, because the vast majority of Americans say they get their news from Facebook, you have to be, you should be treated as a news organization and have to follow those type of standards. That would help solve. The problem with that is, if they don't do that, then it's going to cause gatekeeping, which was going to force you back to the old sources, and those aren't always, accurate sources either. So you have to balance that act. But really, the problem with the internet is it's given stupid people a microphone.
Oh yeah.
And people are too willing to just get sucked into it, and then it spreads from there. Like the other, like a perfect point of that is 65% of people who get radicalized on Facebook happens because of Facebook's algorithm. So if you end up following a couple of people who are, QAnon or alt-right or whatever.
Yeah, they'll be like, hey, look at this guy or girl look at this organization.
Exactly. Then you get sucked down the rabbit hole.
99% match. And, another thing that people have said that have led to fake news, that has led to premature stories, is the ratings battle. Is that people are trying to report this, and just whatever they can say, whatever that clickbait, people are doing it for the ratings. How much do you think this could be a problem for an audience trying to get their news? Or again, should it be, like you mentioned, know what you're getting into, because these organizations are trying to get ratings at the end of the day?
I think it is a problem. So the way you would do that is, I guess the solution that would be to don't just jump on a headline just because it's like a catchy headline, because that's part of the point of the headline, is to sink you in, to actually read whatever the article is. Or if it's just like a Twitter, if it's just a Twitter thing, wait till there's actual information. Don't just immediately jump on it. I know it seems like cool to get outraged right away on something, but you really should just look into and try to figure out what you're talking about, and especially when you have to look at the sources. we talk about this all the time. So a perfect example is this: is anytime you see Project Veritas, anything, they're lying. That's literally what they are. Their founder, James O'Keefe, has said, "I have absolutely no problem with lying because I'm not here to prove. I'm not here to tell the truth. I'm here to win an argument." And he would just lie. Most recently, they did the Ilhan Omar stuff. They got removed from Twitter because they just kept constantly lying. So if you have to know where your sources are, and that's part of the problem with Americans is we just either don't have the attention span, we don't have the time, we don't have the energy to
Tell me about it.
Follow 5 different news sources. Okay, so what is Fox News saying? What is CNN saying? What is what is the Washington Post saying? What is Ryan Grimm saying? Like, it's that variation. Like, people don't have the time for that. And that's part of what I hope for my channel is to say, okay, well, here's the basic facts of what's happening. My videos have gotten a little longer than they started because I'm going more in depth into what's going on. And then I'm giving a little bit more of my opinion. I try to keep the opinion part at the end. So usually when I do a video, it'll start, me looking at the camera, then I'll go into picture in picture to show you what I'm looking at. And then I'll come back to me to, wrap it up.
Yeah, that's what I like about the way you present news, and is that you are showing your legitimacy and credibility by going to easy, accessible mainstream news sources, or go to the source itself and you prove what's right or wrong there. And then, as you said, you bring your opinion, which is one that I respect and value for sure. And I know lots of others. And, speaking of also one funny thing about people jumping to stories, even though this is, again, bringing it back to the sports, do you remember 2 years ago when there is that famous Barry McCrockiner, that famous Twitter troll, and he reported that CP3 demanded a trade and gave Hart, and he said this is when CP3 was on the Rockets, and he said that they gave him a trade, and he's also said, like, I think the quote was, someone said that James Harden got man boobs, and Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp actually reported it as a real story. Just shows how foolish they look from that.
Well, that's that, but they're not really like Skip is not they're not like real journalists. They're
as you said, the personalities. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about Colin Cowherd all day if we want to talk about people.
Yeah, I really a lot of my my sports stuff. So you remember this is I was very big into basketball. So most of my sports information comes from whatever ESPN articles I'll find. I'm actually very angry that they put the Zach Lowe's 10 things I like and I don't like behind a paywall. I love that. That was like really great
stuff.
Oh
my God. Can we talk about paywalls with journalism?
Well, that comes from revenue stuff.
Yeah, it's just funny. Don't you think that's unfair to the journalist itself? Like, I want to get my report out there. I go, and then bam, you got to pay for something. I just found that as an interesting concept. I know people have to do what they do to make money, but I just feel it's unfair to the journalist actually writing the article.
No, it is. And I like Zach Lowe a lot. So I always look forward to those articles. So a lot of my stuff just comes from the Ringer is generally where I get most of my sports information. I generally, like, when Bill Simmons has his stuff on YouTube, I generally watch it, unless it's not like basketball related, then I don't
care. I love the Ringer, him, especially when he has Ryan Russillo on. Great, funny, entertaining guys. Oh man. And why don't we get into, you talk about the Ringer with that concept, why don't we focus some more on Fresh Faces, New Ideas? Talk to me. You talked about some of the motors, you hit on it a little, but walk me through the moment you decided, all right, I'm going to make the content. I want to do this, and I'm going to continue with it. Tell me about the conception of Fresh Faces, New Ideas.
Well, I was like kicking around stuff for a while, like with doing politics, being more involved. So how I started this is over the past couple of years since I graduated college, I've been bouncing around through different things. I briefly coached at a couple places. I did a public access show for a while on basketball. I did it for 2, maybe 3 years. And then Parkland happened and there was a whole bunch of March for Our Lives. And then I went to the one near me and there was this guy holding up a sign called Center Left Radio. So I went to talk to him and he interviewed him. And then I followed up with that. And ultimately that's how I became the co-host for Center Left Radio. And then this was always something I was kicking around, like reaching out to doing stuff. And then my laptop finally died. I said, okay, well now I'm going to get a new one and I'm going to make sure that I have the ability to reach out to this stuff because And I honestly think I should have started like last year, so I could have hopped onto all the election year coverage for the hype bubble, and that would have put me, further ahead than I am currently. But I think part of the thing is people want to just go back to not worry about politics. And while that is good, you should not have to wake up every day in terror of what the president has tweeted. You should be aware of what the government is doing, because if you're not aware, then you're not going to vote and you're not going to push the ideas that you want, because there's always going to be somebody who's paying attention and wants the things that they want, and that's who the politicians are going to pay attention to. So I decided I wanted to give this a shot. I thought YouTube was a good place to do it instead of Twitch. I thought the lane was a little bit bigger for at least where I kind of fall. I think I would fall probably closer. I'd fall to the left on the spectrum, so I don't think there's like as big, like solely YouTube personalities there. Like you have the Young Turks, but they don't do the same type of stuff. You have Vosh, who I think is probably the biggest one, and then there've been like a couple other ones, but that's where I thought the lane was a little closer. I think there's a little bit more right wing.
Your Ben Shapiro's and like that.
Oh yeah, so one of the things that I'll do is every so often when I'm finding on like a slower news day, or there's not really stories that I'm finding all the information about, I'll go to Ben Shapiro's YouTube page and I'll watch one of his clips and say, okay, is this worth me talking about? So far, there have been a couple. I know Candace Owens is going to start her own show, and I'll probably cover that.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm still waiting for another PragerU one that's worth covering, because the last one that I thought was really like worth breaking down was their pro-slavery video. That was a pretty wild one.
Oh man.
But yeah, I mean, there's no point. There's like certain things that I'm not going to touch on. So a lot of people ask me, are you going to cover the Meghan Markle interview? I said no, and they're like, well, I was like, I don't really care. It's not ultimately relevant to American politics, and that's what the goal is.
It's funny how they try to make it like that. Oh my god!
I mean, it's just because they're famous.
Yeah,
that's what it matters, and fame pushes a lot of things in this country.
And when you talk about the actual not to stray too far, when you talk about the actual politics of the United Kingdom, it's more focused on the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson and stuff like that.
Right. They have the monarchy has no real power.
Exactly. They're just a face. Just the most popular face. That's what I always found was interesting.
I mean, it is worth covering foreign policy, and I haven't done like a huge amount of that. I have, insinuated that there are certain policy things that we need to push on for policy, but that has mostly been tied to the vaccine and having and being selective in how our rollout has been, and the rest of the richer countries not sharing it with the countries who can't afford the vaccine and stuff. That's kind of been the limit of it. Also, Joe Biden hasn't really had too many like foreign policy based stuff like so far, because mostly what he's done is COVID. So
yeah,
as things switch towards more of the Iran stuff, more of North Korea stuff, more of the Middle East. I read the one I did today was on the border, so that's kind of foreign policy type stuff. As foreign policy becomes more in the news, then I'll shift toward that. But it's mostly, I'm more aware of, obviously American politics.
Yeah, all the domestic stuff and like that. So like you said, and one of the big motivations for your channel is to help influence and inspire people to vote, especially when we have midterms next year and then again back in 2024. So for the big presidential for 2024. So you got a nice amount of time to hopefully start that trend. And we really made a big push. I mean, you know better than me. It seemed that you couldn't see one ad, whether on your phone, whether on a streaming service, whether on TV, whether on a billboard, that really told you how important it is to vote. Do you think that campaign was successful? I don't know the exact numbers, but did they have more of a, you mentioned that about a third of the country still didn't vote, but did we get enough strides to be satisfied from the previous election?
Well, realistically, you should never be satisfied until you have whatever the entirety of the eligible population is can vote.
Oh, of course.
But in terms of just sheer numbers, so in terms of sheer numbers, Donald Trump got 10 million more votes than he did last time. And he got the most votes of a sitting president of all time. He also got the second most votes of anybody in a presidential history. The person who got the most was Joe Biden. Joe Biden has the most electoral votes of anybody in history, or the most popular votes in anyone in history. This was the largest turnout election ever, just on the sheer numbers of it. And granted, that's obviously going to change as population growth and stuff, but that's the goal. Now, the next step is keeping that type of engagement up for all the smaller, the midterms and for the down ballot races and the other stuff. If you're going to talk more about that stuff, I don't know if you have this lined up, but I know Jesse does a lot of that. Justice Sarati does a lot of that type of stuff.
Yeah, I did see him campaign and stuff like that.
So the part of the thing is you have to keep the people engaged, and you need to have candidates who are willing to get on the ground level and talk to people. And it's always good to have a grassroots movement, and especially it's more important now. And this is coming in the hopes that they'll do something about the filibuster in order to patch HR 1, but it's currently somewhere between 160 and 250 different bills being talked about or being pushed in order to limit voting. Texas currently just wrapped up a massive review of their voter system, and they found 16 votes of people who didn't have a correct address on their voter card. There's 17 million people in Texas. It's literally less than 1 in a million, and they're going to try to stop voting
just for that.
Some of these massive voter suppression bills. Like some of them are just like outright cruel. Like one of them in Georgia is, you always see these massive lines, and more recently we've talked about that certain communities are stuck waiting 8 to 12 hours to vote,
and they had a recount,
right? And one of their laws is it's a felony to give people food or water on the line. Like, why? What does that have to do with securing the vote? Nothing. It's the cruelty in making you not vote is the point. They've said it over and over again.
It shows, but as you mentioned, and what's important when you should look over the sources, just how generally messed up it is, and trying to sway behind the scenes. Despite all that and keeping that engagement momentum up, do we need more people of influence? Do you need people like LeBron and the NBA to make a push for voting again, but also do it for these midterms and then the presidential election after that? Like, what can we do in the in-between years to make sure that engagement stays up?
Well, obviously having celebrities be a push for anything helps, because they're the ones who generate headlines. So yes, having LeBron do it generates headlines. The problem is then you're going to get some weird backlash headlines like Laura Ingraham shut up and dribble type stuff. Then it spirals out from what he does. Also, the NBA in itself has its own issues with like just freedom of speech and stuff with their China stuff. So it is good to have celebrities do it. The problem with that is where the backlash to them reaching out for it. So it's also good to have the actual candidates, especially with social media, push for these type of things. So having more grassroots is always good. And this comes from the parties themselves is building the infrastructure on the ground. So part of the reason Stacey Abrams is so vaulted is because of the infrastructure she built in Georgia.
Yeah.
So if you have these type of infrastructures, and this is part of the problem under the Obama administration, they kind of shut down all their grassroots stuff, and that's why they lost 1,000 seats. So you have to build up the grassroots in order to keep up the bench, in order to keep people engaged. So once you have that, it basically just generates itself. And so you have to build up. That's what I say is the point. It's important to have the people who can actually have an influence, like saying the celebrities push for these, but you also need to do the work on the ground.
Oh yes, I totally see that. And now hopefully you can be part of this trend with your content. And as your following keeps growing and showing the importance, and most important is getting that engagement up with your great wit, your articulation, and just being the great David Bach, I don't see why not. You can't accomplish your goal doing your part to help get more supporters. And now that you have me as somebody who's a big fan, and anytime I can plug to tell people to check you out, I will. I think you'll be able to create that goal for you and create a future. And before we switch to other things, Bach, what would you have to say for your future if there's anything else to add with fresh faces, new ideas, if you haven't already.
No, I mean, look, I'm always looking for more engagement. If you want to DM me something that I've missed, and this is what I say in some of my videos, like, hey, especially my gun control video, talking about HR 8 and HR 1446. I was like, look, I don't have all the answers to everything. I just try to give you what I think are the right answers. And if people want to push back on it, they're more than welcome to. And actually, I encourage that. If you agree with me, let me know. I just reach out. The more engagement people do, to reach out to me. And like I said before, you can find me Fresh Faces, New Ideas on YouTube, or you can find me at Twitter at Faces Ideas. And that's where, just reach out to me there. I'm still working on the Twitter, getting that up stuff. I was tweeting a lot during the impeachment. I got to step up on that more too. But it's a lot of making sure I know what the big topics of the day are, and then what are the big packages that are pushed. I mean, it was easy the last month or so because it was all the COVID bill. So just talking about the ins and outs of that.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of in this weird gray zone where there's a whole lot of things that Joe Biden has to deal with, but it's not clear what he's going to go for first and how and what the next fight is. I mean, the logical next fight is HR 1, which is the Voting Rights Act, and the filibuster. That would be my logical next fight. But I don't know if he's going to do some type of infrastructure bill or he's going to focus more on the border. So I just don't know.
I see. Also highlighting on those first days for Biden, and what are we about? We're just under 2 months in, so around 55 days, or I guess 56. Around there's his first 56 days, and obviously everyone talk about the COVID relief bill. It is passed. We've seen the memes, meme people reaction. We've seen people give actual opinions on it. Bach, how do you feel Biden has done so far, getting one of his big pushes in the campaign is to get this COVID relief bill done, and we're seeing more of effect. I could talk about my state of Connecticut. We have at this moment that the age for the age of eligibility, anyone under 44 years old could get your vaccine in 3 weeks from today, or 3 weeks from Monday, April 5th. So that's what I see. It seems that I've seen also unemployment insurance getting extended. Then we've also seen some funny thing. Well, I don't know if funny is the right word, but some surprising things like the end of daylight savings time and being offered and stuff like that.
Yeah, the end of daylight savings time is always a weird thing that people push. So I've covered the there's a lot of videos I've done about the COVID bill. Look, we know the difference between having the 2 Georgia senators and having control of the Senate is about $1.3 trillion, because that was the difference between the Republican plan and the plan he passed. Mm-hmm. He said he was going to pass at $1.9 trillion. The bill was $1.9 trillion. So that was good that they didn't try to compromise a lower number in order to get Republicans.
Right.
There are some good things in it. The child tax credit is a really good bonus. Getting the extra aid for vaccines for states and stuff is a really good bonus. The $1,400, even if it was the full 2,000, like you said, would not be enough, because a lot of countries were doing monthly payments throughout the pandemic. And this is part of the problem with how our economy crashed, is because we did the worst part of both things. We both did not lock down hard enough and long enough to eradicate the virus, and we also did not support the people well enough who are locked down. So that's how we ended up in this weird mixed area where people couldn't do anything. So yeah, yes, there's good things in it. The problem was he didn't put enough pressure on people like Joe Manchin, because there's no part of the bill that Joe Manchin put his fingertips on that was not made objectively worse. Most notably is $15 minimum wage. We know, I'll get into that in a second, but the other one is the unemployment aid. So originally it was supposed to be $400 extra unemployment, and they were arguing about when they were going to end it. But then Joe Manchin said that he would vote for the Rob Portman one, which would say it ended in July. Ultimately, what they got him back to is it'll be $300 through September. And the reason they did that is because there's they're away in August. So instead of it falling off a cliff like it did last year, where there was a month-long time where they had no bill and the people weren't getting any help. This will last through the Congress not being there. So people will still get aid even though Congress isn't there, and then they can re-up it if they need to in September. But like the $100 for each week is just not, like, their argument for it is dumb. It's, it's like, oh, well, what if people aren't going to want to go back to work? But the problem is there's no work. We're hitting like 800K unemployment numbers every week. We basically for the past year.
It is kind of ridiculous. And we all know that that's not substantial way to live, that extra $100, $300, depending on
right. And the part of that is it doesn't make sense. So if your argument is they're not making enough, they're making too much on unemployment plus something else. So originally unemployment is half your wages plus whatever it is. So it was plus 300. And that's more than what you're making. That means your general wage is so low that just a tiny amount of help would make you break that. So the obvious answer to that would be to raise the minimum wage. The problem is we saw what happened when Bernie introduced it. So let's clear up some things very quickly. The parliamentarian ruling is not technically a ruling. It's a suggestion. The parliamentarian can and has been overruled and removed in the past. All they had to do was have Kamala Harris decide that she wanted to overrule the parliamentarian, and they would have put $15 minimum wage in the bill. So then when Bernie brought his amendment to put $15 in, we got the 8 senators who went against it. So the obvious ones were Manchin and Sinema. Sinema, I honestly cannot tell you what was going through her mind when she voted that way. She's probably going to lose her seat because of it. It was unbelievable. So for those who don't know, she came out with this little like curtsy thumbs down. Being from Arizona, it's reminiscent of the John McCain thumbs down, except for John McCain saved 20 million people insurance. How many people are on Obamacare? Something like that. And Kristen Sinema stopped 32 million people from not having desperate starvation wages. So the other thing is, when anyone who asked these specific senators who voted against the $15 minimum wage, they have to say, well, how do you plan to get it? Because Senator Hassan said she wanted it in a different bill. And then the follow-up question is, well, how do you expect to get it without removing the filibuster? So there's a lot of stuff involved in this. And I have a couple of filibuster videos, but it's always worth mentioning. This was the easiest thing Joe Biden will pass. Everything else from this is going to be a larger fight.
Yeah, you're helping so many people for the better. And that's the added joke about, oh, do Republicans really care about us? And when you see them, every single one of them say no, well, evidence shows that they don't.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it affects them in the midterms. I think it's worth mentioning every single time that they're talking about, aid, you talk about how the Republicans refuse to give it to you. And I think this is the perfect pushback to the Republicans' argument of defund the police. Only one party has voted against giving aid to states in order to keep their employees working. The employees of the state are considered cops. So only one party technically voted to defund the police, and that was the Republican Party. It's a simple argument.
Man, really makes your head spin, Bach, doesn't it?
It's very infuriating sometimes.
Can I ask just one last thing? So 2 things. I'm just curious on your opinion. You mentioned, I mean, this isn't foreign policy or foreign relations, but Biden ordered an airstrike against Syria, and that really upset a lot of people, mainly because they didn't get their stimulus yet and the COVID reveal wasn't passed yet, but yet he still decided to do this. Just curious, what did you think about that? Do you think it was needed? Do you think people were just being impatient? And what do you think? So
there's a little bit more to it than, the fact that whatever bombs he dropped will cost infinitely more than, the $2,000 stimulus checks. I think it's more of the reasoning behind it and the fact that we're trying to pull out of the Middle East and we don't really need to be there in the same way. So I personally haven't followed that specific airstrike. I know he called off a different one. Mm-hmm. If my recollection is correct, it was bombing a target because a regime-backed group attacked a military base. My understanding is what I remember. I don't know if that's totally correct, but
I'm not too familiar with it myself, but I could quickly look into it.
But I think the thing was, more that there was a whole bunch of, it's just expensive. Like the military they just came out with an argument with a statement that they spent like $1.3 trillion on test pilots or on planes that just didn't work. So it's a lot of and this actually
and
so you found it?
Yeah, according to this from the BBC, the article titled "Biden Takes First Military Strike Action with Syria, Strike on Iranian-Backed Militants." The Pentagon strikes destroyed multiple facilities. Excuse me. The U.S. carried out an airstrike targeting Iran-backed militants in Syria, Iran-backed militias in Syria, the first military action undertaken by the Biden administration. The Pentagon said the strike destroyed multiple facilities and was ordered in response to attacks against U.S. and coalition personnel in Iraq.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's a lot of that stuff is a tangled mess, and we need to, figure out how to get out from it.
Right.
But I don't have specific answers for that one. There's other stuff that I'll have to push it for when it gets closer to that.
For sure. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, people were just, and it comes to like all the meme response that people just wanted, they just wanted their money, which they desperately need.
Well, who was it that was it CNN or MSNBC who interviewed that ice fisher guy whose response was, "Those bombs look awfully expensive for somebody who owes me $2,000."
Good question. I'm gonna look that up too. Ice fisher, Syrian. So it looks like. Oh man, I can't find it, but that does sound like a hilarious comment.
Yeah, that was a.
Yeah. Oh boy, but hey, the bill's passed now, and people should be getting their checks and hopefully spend it rightly very soon. And yeah, so transition into other things, Bach. Oh, sorry. One last thing about Biden, and then we can transition. One thing that directly affects me and a lot of people our age is student loan debt. And one of the big campaign points that Biden came into this, especially towards the end, was canceling federal student loan debt specifically. Now, we know it's extended till September as well, but a lot of people are not too pleased that either wasn't a part of the COVID bill or that Biden hasn't directly made a comment towards it to make federal student loan debt canceled outright. One, and I know the criticisms about doing that and how that affects the economy, but also you're helping so many people take that huge financial burden that's causing things, long-term issues, especially financially, whether credit scores getting affected or stuff like that. What do you think about this, Bach? And do you think Biden will ever address it, or was this just a way for him to get votes?
So the criticism about the economy stuff don't make sense because almost all research shows that it'll be like a massive influx into the economy. It'll just bring a whole like new cash revenue to the economy because all these people are going to be able to spend things that they could previously. This will be what the Republican argument for every tax cut will actually happen if you forgive student debt. So it's also very similar to healthcare as well for that argument. So currently there's a whole bunch of arguments. I know Bernie and Elizabeth Warren both said that they were going to remove all student debt. And then I think Warren went down to $50,000 of student debt. So where Biden has come down to is he says, I'm going to remove $10,000 of student debt. And then I'm going to have my AG and the Department of Education look into whether I can do more. Now, that was held up for a couple of reasons. One, because Merrick Garland just got confirmed last week because the Senate was in Republican control for the first month of the Joe Biden administration because they hadn't agreed to a power sharing deal, so reverted to the old one. So even though the Republicans were in the minority, they still had controls of the committee. And because the Republicans just love to screw over Merrick Garland, Lindsey Graham's like, no, I'm not going to give him a hearing again. So Joe Biden's argument is that somewhere between $10,000 and $50,000, it becomes unconstitutional for him to forgive it. Which it doesn't sound like it makes sense on its face. Um,
Yeah, what is so wrong about
well,
helping?
it doesn't make sense. Like where
Yeah.
I don't know where the legislative cutoff for that is.
Yeah,
That's
like
more the argument.
what amendment would exactly be broken in this
Right.
situation?
That's so the argument, my understanding for for giving more student debt, at least from progressives like Pariah Jalapal and people like that, is because he already has the power to freeze it, he has the power to forgive it as well.
Yeah,
So
you
I'm all
figure.
for forgiving student debt.
Oh,
I personally
me
believe in
too.
a larger government, and I think it because the design is to help people, and the argument is, oh well, the government doesn't work, but that's because one party's goal has been to break it. Um, so I think he can forgive it. I don't know what he's going to do. I have to tell you, I don't know a lot of how things are going to show from the Biden administration because he's been like weirdly um, his goal has been to be like an FDR. That's what he said he would be. Is like an
Yeah,
FDR
I think
type
he even
president.
literally said that this is going to be our new deal.
Yeah, I mean, if he put the $15 minimum wage into the COVID bill, it would have been like a light New Deal. So my hope is he does forgive some set of student debt. I think a lot of what's going to happen under Joe Biden is going to be a transition to a more progressive president, and I think so. We'll get things like we're starting with the tax credit. We'll cut child poverty, but it's something that runs out before the election. So it's something that people are going to see that affects their lives positively, and they're going to push for more of that stuff. I think if there's $10,000 of student debt forgiveness and they actually see a bump in the economy just from that, they'll be pushing to do more. I think if we get a public option and they don't allow it to be like sinkholed, so it like kills itself, then I think we can push for a nationalized healthcare system. So I think a lot of the things from Joe Biden are going to be transitional. He could be a very progressive candidate. Would I have preferred Bernie? Yes, because I think Bernie would have pushed for the policies I want right now. But I think Joe Biden is the better option of laying the table. Now, all of these things are moot if they don't deal with the filibuster and they don't deal with the voter suppression and they lose the House or the Senate in 2022. So he has to start like putting some pressure on some of these people in order to get whatever agenda he can with now. Well, because look, his approval rating now is what, like 62%, something like that.
Yes, at this moment, around that range.
I mean,
Happy to see that yesterday.
whatever he's pushing is going to be popular by a majority of the American people.
Yeah.
He has the goodwill, and I think now is the point too when you really push the like the real things that matter. You push for the voting rights. You push for political reform. You push for the Equality Act. I mean, the Equality Act, I think, is just a brain is a no brainer slam dunk.
Yeah, listen, Bach, you won't get any complaints from me. And I understand my student loan debt was something I decided, but I wish we could have more relief and help there with the situation we're in with COVID. And I know I could talk all day with that, but any way to help relieve that debt or at least make some legit strides. I mean, the private student loans are just a problem. Like sometimes with these loan providers, it's almost like they don't care how you get the money in a pandemic. I remember I literally said, "What do you want me to? What I wanted to say? What do you want me to like be a hitman, or do you want me to be a drug dealer?" What they say, all those our calls are monitored for quality assurance purposes. So I couldn't say that, but I said like, what lawfully you're asking for 4 figures of cash in a pandemic where I'm unemployed. Like, what else do you want me to do? And I know, I mean, well, the easy thing is just to create the forbearance until I'm not employed anymore. But it's just a big loophole of frustration and stress that, I'll take any way to get that help. And then when we talk about healthcare, we've seen so many people who are afraid to get checkups because they have no health insurance, where if they get in an accident, before they care about anything, they think about how much this is going to cost. And now I've enrolled in health insurance for the first time as I became eligible. And it's just,
Are you in Cobra?
no, I'm actually, because I was unemployed, I was still able to qualify for kinetic cares. So that's where I'm going to be covered by for the next, for the next 8 months until December. And that's just a whole new world and an all new expense. But it's been a time, and those are things I'm passionate about that I hope our government can help
Yeah.
overcome those
So
obstacles.
let me tell you something very quick before I know you want to switch topics, but my representative was Nita Lowy for the entirety of my life prior to this election. And then there was like 15 candidates running. So when I would look at them, I only looked for I looked for two things in particular. One, are you taking corporate PAC money? And two, do you
Yep.
support Medicare for all? And there was only one candidate who fell in that category, and that was the guy who won. And so I'm very happy that Mondaire Jones is actually my representative.
Look at that.
I've met him a couple times. He's a really nice guy. I did actually my last live stream. I made a point because C-SPAN has mixed him and Jamal Bowman up, which is ridiculous, but it's funny. So they're both these two black guys from New York, and they're separate districts. Like one's at 16, one's at 17, but they're not the same people. Like Jamal Bowman beat Elliot Engel, and Mondaire Jones is the first openly gay black man to be in Congress.
Wow, you'd think it's such a stereotypical way to get those things confused. It's like, why? It's really that hard?
Yeah.
But hopefully, well, I'm glad to hear we can have legit representatives fight for what we ask for and do their job in that way. So why don't we sway away from politics and focus on the National Basketball Association? Bach, you're a big NBA fan. First things first, so my audience knows, who is your team if you have one?
I'm a Spurs fan.
Spurs fan, that's right. So
Tim Duncan's my favorite player.
San Antonio Spurs fan and grew up in Westchester. I love it. But I'm sorry, you're about to say something else?
Yeah, it's been a weird year. Last year was the first time basically in almost my entire lifetime that the Spurs missed the playoffs.
Yeah, completely missed it, man.
I was kind of hoping that we would be worse than we were this year. We got a weird team. We really need a big.
I saw that they're letting go of LaMarcus Aldridge.
Well, they're going to try to trade him.
Well, yes, I don't know trade where. Him.
I think Miami is the most likely destination.
They could use that with another big veteran presence next to Bam. That's the only thing. That Heat team is extremely young, even though they won the East last year. I'm sure that extra veteran presence can help them.
Yeah, and then the other thing with this Spurs team is, like, we have so many wings, and like I really like Devin Vassell, who is our rookie. I was hoping we would get the Israeli kid Denny.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, realistically, my number one was I saw us taking Patrick Williams, but obviously the Bulls took him at 4, and then Denny started falling, and I was like, oh, maybe we could get him. But then we ended up with Devin Vassell, who I'm very impressed with. I think ultimately we might end up trading Lonnie because I think he's the one who doesn't fit. I don't know where he's going to go, but we have Derek and DeJounte Murray are the backcourt of the future. And then we got Keldon Johnson, who I don't know what to make of Keldon Johnson. I know they played him at power forward against the Pistons. I think he's best coming off the bench or like at the 3 because he's not like big. So he's like 6'5", so he doesn't really have like the length to be like a wing, and he's clearly not big enough to be a 4. So that's where there's the hope for Luka. But I think Lonnie's the one who gets traded because he kind of doesn't really fit.
And who do you think, with what's available, could take that spot? So, because right now they are right in the hunt. So yeah, right now they're 7th in the West, so they would actually qualify for the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
So you really don't want to, when you're right there, you don't want to, that's the one thing that was found interesting, trading LaMarcus. But do you think there is a good chance to make that run, especially if you get a replacement player for Lonnie, like you said?
Well, I don't think they're going to trade Lonnie now. I think it's a down the road thing because he's still on his rookie contract and they're still in this like weird semi-competitive thing. My real hope was had traded DeMar and LaMarcus during the offseason so that they could come in here and be bad because this draft class is bonkers. So, I mean, if we ended up
with upcoming with like Cade Cunningham and Katie and stuff.
Yeah, if we ended up with like Evan Mobley, that would be game changing. But I don't see that happening. So we're probably going to be too good to get, the top 5 guys. I think the Texas kid they got that good center. I haven't followed like a huge amount of college. Although speaking of college,
Yes.
Because I didn't watch Selection Sunday. I did see Hartford made it.
Hartford made it. They won the American East on Saturday, beat UMass Lowell, and they're going to play the second best team in the nation, Baylor, as a 16 seed, and they're a 1.
So just to go briefly, my Hartford basketball, like the top memories I have was my freshman year, we had the tournament at Hartford.
The actual NCAA tournament?
No, our conference tournament.
Oh, American East. Yes.
Yeah. So we made it to the second round and we went to double overtime against Vermont, and we lost that game because we had them in overtime, but we gave up a dunk. Like the guy caught it on the block, looked around, looked around again, and then dunked it. And
that game winning, you don't see a lot of those.
No, that was to send it in second overtime that we lost.
That's still crazy.
And then the year after Louisville won the title that then got removed, we played Louisville and Florida Gulf Coast that year, and that was when Florida Gulf Coast was Dunk City, and we lost both those games by like 40.
Yeah, they did not put a fight.
We played the Purdue when they had Chris Dunn, and then the most recent memory was we lost by 30 to Zion's Duke on national television. Like 2 years ago.
Didn't even put a fight. Oh man.
Well, no, they were close in the second half.
Exactly. I should say, of course, that's the very best Hartford player may not even make the Duke team. He could possibly be a walk-on. Like that's
I have no idea who's on our team this year. I just because we get no attention.
Yeah, but now we do, and now we're going to play the second best team in the nation, who's so proficient. Baylor's really proficient on the offensive defense, and yeah, they're going to be.
They're going to kill us.
I mean, unless we have some
no
miracle.
UNLV. There's no
UMBC.
What was it? Loyola Chicago, was that the one who upset Virginia a couple years ago?
Yeah, it was UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and they killed them too. But I don't think that's going to be the case. And I actually watched the Hartford American East Championship, but we cannot score for shit. We only scored like 40 points, like around that for a college game. That's bad. And Baylor averages like 84 in college. Okay. So,
hey, they made the tournament, so that's a step up.
Oh yes, for sure. Back to your Spurs. How much longer do you think Greg Popovich is holding on? And looks like we're definitely either going to get a Becky Hammond replacement here and make her officially the first woman's coach. And we saw Pop get ejected a few months ago, and she hopped in there. How much longer do you think Pop is in it?
I think he hangs around till I don't know how many years are left on his contract, but I think he's next up to coach the USA team for the Olympics. He makes it through that, and then I think he's probably going to hang it up a couple years after that, like a year or two, whenever his contract ends, because I think he wants to build the bridge to the next era.
Yeah, you think Becky Hammond is going to be leading that? As we said, she's already coached
last year
before.
We had Timmy on the bench.
Yep.
And then
where'd he go, by the way? I just quickly look. He's not a coach anymore.
Yeah, he just left. He just went back to do whatever else he wanted to do.
All right then. I didn't know that. Wow.
I think it's probably going to be Becky Hammond, because every other assistant keeps getting hired.
Yeah, right. And she's been there forever, a long time. She's earned it. She's earned the spot. She went up the ranks, and she's very fun. She's very animated to watch. Yeah, she's really cool. And like she said, she knows what she's doing. She's put the work in. So
yeah, I think she's going to be the next one. I don't know when Pop's going to give it up. I really thought this would be the last year because his wife just died. So it was like a hard. So I think after he coaches the Olympic team, I think he's probably going to be done.
Yeah, and hell of a career, both in the office and on the court. And speaking as a Spurs fan, Bach, does it grind your gears that historically, even though the Spurs were so dominant in the 2000s and the early 2010s and 1-99, it feels as a whole they're not as revered as a dynasty compared to like the Warriors or their battles with the Heat or the Lakers, Shaq and Kobe, and then Kobe and Powell.
We're not considered a dynasty
as a whole, but yet you have what, 5 rings?
5 rings. Yeah.
So how from your perspective do you feel like not getting the love historically?
Well, obviously we don't get the love. I don't think any of the Spurs really get the love. I mean, Tim Duncan is universally recognized as the greatest power forward, but I would go further than that and say he was the best player of his generation. I would take Tim Duncan.
I think you could make a fair argument there. I mean, right off the bat, leaving Wake Forest to get in the ring, the Twin Towers with David Robinson.
It's so I think the dynasty label is fair not to give to them because a dynasty kind of implies that you win multiple titles back to back, and we never had that back to back. So the Lakers beat us on the Fisher 3, and then we lost on the Ray Allen travel, and then we came back the next year, we won. So I mean, we had the chances to be a dynasty. The after the 05 title, Manu fouled Dirk for the 3, and that's why we lost that series. So like we never won the dynasty there was, although we did do a good job of ending a whole bunch of dynasties. We did it to the Heat.
Yeah.
We would have done it to the Warriors when Kawhi got hurt. We were going to win that series when KD. If Kawhi got hurt, the Spurs would have won that title.
I remember.
And then Kawhi left, so then they beat the Warriors the next year, or 2 years ago. So I count that as a Spurs ending another title, ending another dynasty. So yeah, Kawhi broke 3 dynasties. Although if Kawhi came back, I would still welcome him back with owning arms. Him and Danny Green. Although Danny Green is unbelievably frustrating because like every other year he can't shoot.
Right. Yeah. And he just happens to be in the right place at the right time, winning with Toronto, winning with
the
Lakers.
The 2013 title, if we had won that title, he would have been finals MVP.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, there's always that tough block that Bosch had on him in Game 6. Must be tough.
Well, that and then the Ray Allen travel, but other than that.
Yeah. So you say it's a travel, huh? Getting that,
took 3 steps.
The as we saw, LeBron shoots Bosch, then him, and it was fun for me not having a dog in the fight, but I understand your frustration there.
Yeah, it's been a weird couple of years, and then we kept matching up with the Warriors like without Kawhi, and we don't have like a wing. Like at this point, our best wing defender is probably like Devin Vassell, would be like the only one who would like be close to matching up with KD. Otherwise, Danny Green and DeJounte Murray are like 6'5" each. KD's 7 feet tall.
Yeah, right. Charles Day on that court. So having all said that, Bach, I'm a big Knicks fan. It's been such an exciting time. We played I don't know if you happened to see last night's game against the Nets, just played our heart out. Played our heart out. And even though on paper we're supposed to get our ass kicked, we still held it in there. Finally having Coach Thibs really changing things up. I'm just curious, as being a big NBA fan, do you think the Knicks have a legitimate future? Do you think we're building something? Maybe even get our first playoff spot since 2013 in 8 years? Do you think the Knicks have a legit future?
Do they have a legit future? Yes. What it is, I have no idea, because the fact that Julius Randle is doing what he's doing is just like absurd. He's like, what? Like nobody ever saw this coming. So
no, they didn't.
In theory, if Julius Randle can maintain this level of production, RJ is going to get better. At some point, Richard Robinson will get healthy and stop fouling the crap out of everybody.
That's the big one. We need him back. But Nerlens Noel has been holding his own.
No, it's been good. But I mean, Richard Robinson is like, wasn't he?
He was an all rookie last year.
Since coming into the league, doesn't he lead the league in block 3-pointers?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, he's a menace defensively, and he broke Wilt Chamberlain's record for field goal percentage. Granted, everything he does is within an inch of the rim.
He's extremely aggressive. How about Emmanuel Quickly too? No one saw that coming.
That was a big one. I thought they screwed up on that pick. I still even think they screwed up with Obi.
Yeah, dude, it's not been good. Thibs hasn't given them the minutes for him for a reason. For a reason. I support him. He represented us in the dunk contest, but so far
I didn't even watch like any of the All-Star stuff.
But I understand. But it seems that, like you said, is it too early to say he's a bust already?
No, I think it's not too early to say he's a bust. I think if you look at who else was on the board, whether they take him 8. So they could have had Denny. They could have had Tyler Halliburton. That would have been they could have had Halliburton. That would have been a big change. They got Quigley. That was good.
That came in over second round pick. I mean, we've not been doing well in the draft. Kevin Knox, bust, as we say, Kobe. But Emmanuel Quickly, man.
So I think next year he'll probably
he got his first start. Yeah, he got his first start yesterday.
I think the problem is you have too many weird guards. Like you have too many ball dominant guards. And in reality, you need somebody like Quigley who can play off the ball, so RJ can handle the ball more.
Definitely.
So that's like the Derrick Rose trade makes sense because of who your coach is, and that's why he brought Taj Gibson back. But on paper, you really need more off-ball shooting to let RJ handle, because that was the big that was the big thing about him coming out of college, was he was like that wing who you could kind of like run your offense through. Like he's in a weird spot in comparison to the other two guys taking ahead of him, because their offenses are built around them. Ja is obviously a point guard, and the Pelicans obviously have turned it into Point Zion.
Just one pick away, but yet I'm not sad. I'm not upset with RJ now. At first, if you told me last year, I thought, man, we fucked up another draft pick. But he's really put his own this year, especially.
Yeah, he's getting. I think they're doing him a disservice by not letting him play more point, but he's definitely improved. It's going to be interesting. They wasted a lot of picks. Although, to be fair, it does seem that nobody won the Porzingis trade.
Yes, that's what's crazy. Like, when we traded him, I was fine because he did not seem like he wanted to be here. He's being a jerk.
He was overrated.
Thanks, Phil Jackson. And
to be fair, that was the best pick he had.
Yeah, at one point, and between him and Frank need to clean up, but he did play some good defense last night, but he fouled himself out. But yeah, KP will accept that little stretch in like 17, 18 for like 20 games before he tore his ACL. It's like, okay, maybe it is legit, but nope. And
so you got what? You got a pick and then some players and Dennis Smith. Has the pick come over yet?
The compensatory pick comes next season, I believe.
Next season? Okay.
Well, let me just double check on that. Or that was the Quickly pick. Part of me actually thinks it was that. Do you mind if I check that trade really quick?
I don't care. So Dennis Smith ultimately turned into Derrick Rose.
Yeah, and we traded him to Detroit.
Yeah. So look, the fact that Porzingis can't stay healthy because his legs are apparently made out of paper mache.
It's tough to watch. You get nervous.
Is like wild. Which is unfortunate for the Mavs because they really lost out. I think the biggest hit to them was Giannis not going there. I think if Giannis ultimately had a choice, like he could have picked anyone in the league to play with, I think he should have picked Dallas or Toronto.
Oh man, that would, if he went to Dallas, especially. Why don't we talk about Luka? He seemed to really, I mean, he's still playing all-star level, but seems like we watch games where he's almost out of it. It gets outplayed. Do you think there's any accuracy to that or no?
I think in the beginning of the season, it was fat.
Yeah.
I think this happened to a lot of players. They weren't ready for how fast the season started.
Yeah, so you did not have a lot of time.
Right. So I think that's why a bunch of the like worst teams did pretty well to begin with, because they kept their continuity going. And so like some of the older teams had to rest a little bit more and they weren't ready for the start of the season. But I think the biggest issue was he was fat and he doesn't really have like a supporting cast that can really help him. Like Josh Richardson on paper is better than Josh Richardson, the player.
Right.
And their picks haven't panned out, although they were really good. Josh Green and Tyrell Terry were really good picks for them. I can't believe Terry fell to the second round. But you know, they're gonna come out. They have a really good coach. So they'll be fine. Luka's just so good anyway. I think his issue was he was fat and he couldn't hit threes.
Yes, I hear that. By the way, for the picks, it was including those picks. We had DeAndre Jordan down with Brooklyn, Dennis Smith Jr. They also traded Tim Hardaway Jr. there. But yes, the Knicks gave a first unprotected 2021 pick. I think so. It looks like that pick was for Quick, if I'm reading it correctly, and then a top 10 protected pick in 2023.
Okay.
So hey, if it was KP for Quick, and if Quick's holding it down, look at that. That could be the one win.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's wild.
It's finally things are changing, Bach. The world's a better place when the Knicks are good.
Well, I mean, New York
or competitive.
So just the fact that New York's both teams are competitive. I mean, so this is actually a really weird story.
Yeah, tell me.
The Nets played the Spurs last season. I was at that game. My girlfriend got me tickets for my birthday, and then a week later we shut down.
No way.
Like I was at like the last Nets game before the shutdown, and it was so weird. Like thinking about it in October, talking to her about it, she was like, we were at a game surrounded by thousands of people, like right before Corona.
Now that we are letting fans back in slowly, now we're 10% and growing, would you feel comfortable going to an NBA game?
Probably not. I'd probably wait till next season. I mean,
Mhm.
look, like, yes, there's this need to get out, but we're like hunkered down. We're like 5-6 months out of this. So Joe
Right.
said May 1st, everyone's going to be eligible. So like right after we make it through New Year's or through the 4th of July, we're probably pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, just wear a mask. It's really not that hard. Take the vaccine when it's your turn. And
Oh,
then,
I'm getting in line once I can.
yeah,
You're
it's,
absolutely right.
we're right there. So yeah, it's cool to have the fans in. I think especially if the Knicks made the playoffs, that the
Can you
stadium would
believe
be
that?
rock. I can't, like, it is mind-boggling that they're this good still.
Do you got to give it to Coach Thibs? Do you think he gets Coach of the Year for this?
No. I also
Really?
don't think you're going to make the playoffs. So here's my
Why
thing.
is
The
that?
Knicks have had one of the softest schedules in the league, and their schedule gets much harder going forward. They've
Oh, yeah.
also had the largest gap between projected field goal range and actual field goal range. So like, the teams have been shooting worse by the largest margin in the league, and they've had an easy schedule, and they're like just above 500.
The thing that you are making a good point, and that was one of the things that at least assuring, and I get it. We're not, if we make the playoffs, and I've been on record say this,
But
it's going to be it's possible. I'm pushing for it, but that would be just, we're playing it with house money with what's going on in this. And what's been tough is we do well against the bad teams, but we've seen in the last stretch, it's the really good teams were not good. Got our ass beat by Milwaukee this past weekend. Even though we've battled hard, still tough loss with Brooklyn. That could have gone either way. And I mean, we talk about the shooting too. We just had so many open looks at the fourth quarter, especially in the last 5 minutes, that just didn't go in.
well, Brooklyn's over without KD and Blake, so right.
Exactly. Blake's first game, I think, would be tomorrow. So yeah, again, if we lost with that, with just the Harden and Kyrie led team, we're playing the Sixers tonight as we record it. That's probably going to be another blowout. So, we do have a ways to go, but at least, like you said, we're just being competitive. And, I'm sure you saw the video, how crazy outside Madison Square Garden was when we hit 500. Just
Yeah, I haven't
imagine.
actually seen that video, but look, the goal, even if you don't make the playoffs, you've changed the perception of the franchise.
That's what the most important and the biggest win. People would go and, think they got an automatic win. When we hit 20 wins, right before the All-Star break, we didn't hit 20 wins until that was our very last win of the year. We went 20 and 42. And now we're 20 and 9. Well, now 20 and 20, but it's just so much fun to be competitive, and that's what I'm saying. And now
and that's how you're going to get free agents like
yes,
that.
exactly.
Now instead of, it's New York that they're going to have an option. Now when somebody gets upset and wants to leave, this is like a realistic option for you, because you have
Exactly.
and especially you have Randall, who now appears to be, it's possible to build a centerpiece around him.
Yes, and it seems that he wants to be the guy. I was expecting him to have a good season, then just get traded to a competitive team.
Yeah, he had.
That's what I was expecting, and now he's making it his team. I'm sorry, you were saying? I didn't mean to interrupt.
Their last year, their contracts were good. Like, they signed people to good, like, 1 year, 2 year deals. Like, Randall, made sense to splurge on him because he was the youngest guy, and he was the one who, like, you could play for a couple years and then trade him. The Morris signing, I'm still mad about, because you fucked us out of David Bertans for that one. But now we don't have to pay him $80 million.
Yeah, see, and if you're talking, as you're saying, building the core while still being competitive, as you said, maybe it ain't so bad either.
Yeah, so I mean, you had some nice. Randall's still, what is he, 25 yet?
Yeah, I think he's still really young. I mean,
and Robinson and Quigley and RJ Barrett are at least like under 23. So you still got young people.
Julius Randle's 26, but yeah,
Okay.
I think RJ's 21, Quick's 19. I think Obi's older than most of the.
Well, yeah, Obi's in there too. I mean, Frank's got to be. This is the end of his rookie contract, right?
Yes, Frank. This is definitely the end of his contract.
So he could possibly traded, and then Kevin will be out of the league in 2 years. So you know,
see ya.
Yeah,
honestly,
I can't believe they didn't take Michael Porter Jr.
Oh yeah, just the cringe Bach. But you were saying the Knicks, you think that they might not make the playoffs. So right now, I respect your opinion, but at this moment, the season today, they would be in the play-in tournament. Right above them is the Hornets at 2018. Knicks are exactly 2020. The Hawks, who've been really hot lately, at 19 and 20. Then it goes the Bulls and Pacers. And then under them is the Raptors, who are still staying competitive. But then we have the Cavs, Wizards, Magic, who nobody's looking right now. None of them, all of them are in at least on a 3-game losing streak and worse. But you think that the Knicks might be just short? Why is that? I mean,
Well, like I said,
you explain. Sorry, you explained you
well, also
explained the
the teams
dynamic.
behind them.
Yes.
So
Do you think they
hold
can
on.
overthrow?
Let me. So behind them is I think Toronto's going to make it. I think they've had a lot of injury issues. I think at some point Nick Nurse is actually going to play Chris Boucher more at center. I wish he would, because I keep picking him up in fantasy and then he keeps like flipping him around.
Not getting his minutes.
I mean, he's their best option at center. The once they're healthy, I think a lot of Toronto stuff depends on what they do with Lowry when they trade him. I think the Knicks are a year away. I don't know if the Hornets are going to make it, but holy crap, is LaMelo better than I thought he would be.
Right? And him with having a solid Gordon Hayward on his side too, with that veteran presence. And I mean, LaMelo Ball is legit. He's definitely winning Rookie of the Year, and he's way better than his brother, it looks like.
Well, the issue really was with Lonzo, he couldn't shoot. And that's still kind of the issue. And
amazing at passing and assists,
and a good defender, and he's a big guard, but he couldn't shoot. And LaMelo coming into the draft had a similar outlook. So his shooting has been much more average. Like, I think he just didn't care when he was playing elsewhere. And I think
out in Australia and stuff.
Yeah, I think him playing in the NBA is a totally different thing. So I mean, it's good for the Hornets, but no, I think Toronto's going to be there, and I mean the Heat, they're going to be in the playoffs. I don't know if the Wizards are going to make it, but out of those bottom 3 teams, they're the only ones that's going to be competitive.
And do you know they're definitely not getting rid of Brad Beal? Do you think, as some people have
I don't think they're going to get rid of Brad Beal. I think they're going to see one more year how it goes, because they're going to chalk this up to COVID and being a weird season and give us one more shot. I think Beal might actually realistically want to stay.
Poor Russ too.
Man, you got to respect the dude. He can't shoot, but he plays his heart out. I mean, he's the only guy who's ever, was it 3 seasons now he's averaged a triple-double?
Yeah, it's Oscar Robertson.
I mean, for all you get mad at his flaws, but I mean, he's an unbelievable player.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's going to Hall of Fame. I mean, when you average a triple-double, isn't that enough for more than one season too?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the first one was stat padding. And then there was the weird Paul George years. It's a weird team. Oklahoma City's had some weird teams.
So with who we have teams going in. The Nets, again, if the Sixers lose tonight, the Nets going first. The Bucks have been hot. The Celtics playing much better from the East, and the Sixers just killing it. The West have the rise of the Jazz and the Sun. Who would have thought? I mean, it was cool when CP3 came to the Suns, but who would have thought that extra kick? And everyone was excited with how well the Suns played in the bubble, but now they're second in the East. Can't forget the Clippers too, with Kawhi and Paul George, and the Nuggets. The Nuggets are still a team force to be reckoned with. With all this going on, Bach, who do you see making the finals from the East and the West, and who do you think is going to win it all as of today in mid-March?
Well, in the East, I think it's going to be Brooklyn.
You do?
So my caveat to that is they need another big guy, and I don't know where they're going to get him.
And then not on top of Blake.
Yeah, they need like an actual big guy who can play defense and rebound.
So wouldn't a perfect person be a Andre Drummond then?
It would be an Andre Drummond, but they have no assets to trade for Andre Drummond.
They literally let everything else they could go, but not this one.
So I don't know. I think Philly could make it. They got to hit their threes. Because realistically, they match up pretty well. I mean, Joel Embiid is going to average 35 and 17 against them. Ben Simmons is one of the few players who could theoretically slow down any of the Brooklyn players who gets hot. Matisse Thybulle is a really good defender.
Mhm.
I don't know what to make of Milwaukee. They've just had a weird year, but it's one of those three. I think it's going to be Brooklyn. For the West, it's not going to be Utah. They're a lot of it is built.
You think they're a flawed team? You think they're
Well, yeah, they
fugazi
are
almost?
because we've seen every single year that there's a perimeter guy. They just torch Rudy Gobert every single time. Utah need a wing guy. They don't have like a true wing stopper that could like clamp down on like a hot scoring wing or guard.
Could your boy LaMarcus be that guy to fill in the role?
No, LaMarcus can't walk. You ever watch him run up and down the court? The dude can't move.
Not lately, but
No,
actually,
he's
there's
just
one
not
video
built.
you're feed. I'm thinking about it now. Yeah, I've seen he's has some wear and tear.
I mean, they really need a wing guy. I like the Nuggets a lot. I'm a huge Jokic fan. I think the MVP race is going to come down to him or Embiid. But I think if he averages like almost a triple double, you got to give it to Jokic because he's a center. Centers don't average triple doubles, and he's not doing it with blocks.
He could get those threes in there too.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing holding them back is Jamal Murray is super inconsistent, and they've been hurt, and you never really know. And Michael Porter is kind of like waving in and out whether he's going to take the leap. Phoenix, I don't know. Their offense is really good. Devin Booker is very good. They got DeAndre in like a weird spot. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, long term, they would have been better taking Luka than DeAndre Ayton because you could have Luka, Devin Booker.
Yep.
Boy, and then you can figure out the rest of it from there. But I think they're going to be they might make it to the second. They'll probably make it to the second round. I don't know if they'll make it to the Western Conference Finals. I still think it's probably going to be one of the LA teams versus I'm going to say Denver. I think Denver's going to be the other team in the Western Conference Final versus one of the LA teams. I don't know which one it is. It's going to depend a lot on their health and whether or not the Clippers, shit themselves again.
Yo, you got to. I'm sorry.
That was bad. That was so bad. Like watching that.
Wow. Yeah. In the second round.
So bad.
It's. I mean, they lost their coach out of it. Doc Rivers got ousted after that. So, yeah, but they're still holding it down with Tyronn Lue. And boy, I'm going. I can't remember. I originally thought the Clippers in my early picks when I did my NBA show, but the Lakers, I mean, once AD is back at full streak too, like if LeBron gets that fifth ring, and next season, so much on the line to try to tie Jordan. I think that alone could be the extra motivating factor with him. I know what is LeBron 37, 38.
37, I think. Also, the other thing is, if the Clippers don't win this year, they're in a lot of trouble because Paul George and Kawhi are free agents.
Yeah, exactly. And then it turns into a Colossus failure.
So if they like flame out again, somebody's getting traded. That's good for Paul George.
Again. Oh boy. But we have so much NBA to look forward to, Bach. We really do. And I think seeing a Brooklyn team going against the Lakers. I still have to be loyal and keep with my Bucks. I said Bucks Clippers at the beginning of the season, but if I don't know,
this Brooklyn team is just bonkers.
Yeah, I mean Brooklyn. You have an all-star team alone. You'd have an all-star team 5 years ago, if with that four plus, Joe Harris and stuff, but or Jeff Green. It's so intense, and we get to watch it through the summer now, and I just can't wait. So, Bach, there's one more thing I have to do with you before we sign off here. I think you may have heard of it before, but just in case you haven't, the famous Proust questionnaire, which is 10 final questions to learn more about you, as we've been killing it for an hour and a half. I would just love to hear your answers to these 10 short but deep questions. Are you ready?
Okay.
So what's your favorite word, Bach?
My favorite word?
Yep.
I have no idea. I think the word I use most often is because I'm thinking, but like that's such a weird question. I don't know if I have a favorite word.
All right. What's your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. I don't know. I don't really dislike languages, I guess would be my statement.
No worries.
I'm sure you get the answer like moist all the time.
It has been a couple, or people comment or no, or people say, well, it's not moist, or I've also heard you get moist a lot, but yeah, people are very different with that. My favorite, one of the times I get a lot is your favorite curse word is fuck. That's a popular one. But my next question, it's not a sexual question, it's more of a life question. But what turns you on in this world?
Like what makes me happy type of thing.
Yeah, like what turns you on, whether it's nature, or basketball, or politics? Like what
I
gives you so much fulfillment?
I like to be mentally stimulated. I enjoy the politics because I like to think about things, and I enjoy debating because I like to craft an argument to see whether I can change someone's mind. The basketball, I just like, part of the reason I'm a Spurs fan is watching them play. You see the beauty in the game of it. The passing and the rotations and stuff.
They play like a real
I go
college
watch
system
myself on film, and it's nowhere near that.
Yeah, like especially those old Spurs teams, you just saw a perfectly conducted basketball, almost like how a great college team plays as a team. What turns you off in this world?
I really hate stupid people.
Tell me about it.
I don't mean like you have like the inability to learn, or you're not, you're like, there's something like about you where you just don't understand information. I mean, like people who are objectively against learning more and bettering themselves, and like against more information.
Yeah, I mean, with that too, it's just give some more effort. Use your common sense. Don't do the stereotype of a stupid person. So my next question is, what sound or noise do you love?
Well, I love hearing like a basketball bounce. Like, you walk on the court, you just like hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
That's
Even
always good.
Even the squeaky sneakers out there, and then a great swoosh is a lovely sound.
It's always nice, yeah. I mean, the sneaker noise is okay because that varies based on the gym and the shoes. I don't really mind the, but it's like you can hear like the bouncing, like the first time you get on the court, you hear the bouncing ball. It's just like a different feeling. You're like, all right, now it's game time.
Yes, sir. You've been able to ball lately?
Yeah, actually, I found a gym, so I've been going like
cool.
once or twice a week.
Getting ready for
and I was playing at a
too?
park when it was nicer.
Oh yes, I can't wait I've been training for Hummer ball, so it's gonna be good. What sound or noise do you hate?
I hate my alarm. I'm sure that's a pretty good answer.
Actually, that's a first. No one's ever
Really?
said the alarm.
Yeah, man, I like to sleep. Sleep is good.
Oh yes. So what's your favorite curse word?
Probably fuck. Probably fuck.
Hey,
it's just so versatile.
Absolutely. What a word created. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I'd love to be a pro basketball player, but that would be well, but to actually attempt, I'd really love to try to be president. I think that would be fun.
Yo,
It's a
David
really
Bach
stressful
president.
job. It's a really stressful job, but I think if you truly care about people and you have the right policies to make people's lives better, it would be worth it.
Please be the president and raise the stock of this podcast. You definitely have my support. Vote Bach. 2030s, 40s, 50s.
So I actually figured it out. Like a realistic age time would be like 2040.
2040. Oh man, we'll see. We're at 19 years from now.
Yeah.
All right. What profession would you not like to do?
Oof. Would I not like to? There's some truly terrible professions that just I have no desire to do. Um, no offense to like anyone who does this, but I really don't want to have anything to do with like painting. Like I know you had Gabe on, but I can't do it. Like I can't, like it's not the type of thing that I can't draw. It's just I can't. And I don't want anything to do. I used to get laughed at in my art classes in high school because I was so bad at it. It's just I have no desire to do any.
Oh man, I wish I could paint and draw and all that too. I have the worst handwriting ever. Like it makes doctors look
Dude, I
legible.
can't. I'm so happy we have computers type stuff, but I need spell check on everything. I can't spell at all.
Oh yeah, you know what's crazy? It's just how much of your subconscious is your assume. Oh, it's gonna just auto edit for me.
Yeah,
That's we
get
love
that problem with YouTube all the time.
it. My final question for you, Bach, for today: if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You made the world a better place.
Look at that, man! What a wholesome, awesome answer, Bach. Tell us again where we can find your content and follow you.
You can follow me on YouTube at Fresh Faces New Ideas. You can follow me on Twitter at Faces Ideas. And you can listen to me on this podcast. What is Thursday? Is this coming out?
Yep, this Thursday, the 18th.
And you can follow me on the Center Left Radio podcast, the ones where it says David Bach.
All right. I'm going to be searching for it. I know I can't wait to see the more great things you produce. And I really hope you want to come on a regular basis, Bach. This was great.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a good time. It's been a while since we've chatted. I'm going to keep following what you do. You know?
Oh, and likewise here, I really, really enjoy your opinions and listening to them. So I'm glad we can make this the first of many collaborations. And yeah, you're just an awesome guest, Bach. Seriously, and just thank you for the vibes. Thank you for your stories, and just thank you for being awesome. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, please just follow me on this stuff. That would be really helpful if you like what I say. But thank you for doing this, Matt. I appreciate this. It's good catching up with you.
My pleasure, man. Can't wait to do this again. That's the great David Bach, host of Fresh Faces New Ideas, and we will see you really, really soon, my friend.